He warned Everest might turn deadly that week, and then stepped into the very danger he predicted. Robin Haynes Fisher was a 44-year-old British climber who reached the top of Everest on May 25, 2019. Minutes later, on the way down in the death zone, his body gave out. Guides swapped his oxygen and tried to help, but at roughly 150 meters below the summit, around 8,700 meters, he collapsed and never recovered. The immediate cause wasn't a fall or a storm. It was altitude illness and exhaustion at extreme height after a successful summit during one of the season's most crowded windows. Days earlier, Robin had posted a sober warning about the queues building near the top, even shifting his own plan to avoid the rush. He knew the risk. He went anyway. That tension between preparation and a system under pressure is the heart of this story. But who was he before that final push? And why did Everest in 2019 become a tipping point? That's where we start next. 2019 wasn't a normal Everest season. Nepal issued 381 summit permits on its side alone, a record that set the stage for crowding high on the route. When the weather finally opened, too many teams moved at once. A single image told the story. The viral queue on May 22nd, shot by climber Nirmal Nims Purya, showing a packed line edging toward the Hillary Step and the summit. Hours of waiting in the death zone meant more time burning oxygen, getting colder, and losing strength. Forecasts left only a handful of safe summit days that May, far fewer than the year before, so guides bunched their pushes into the same windows. That's when bottlenecks formed, with climbers stalled for 2 to 3 hours near the ridge. By the end of the month, 11 climbers had died on Everest, even as the mountain saw record summits. The pattern most often cited: altitude illness and exhaustion intensified by delays high above 8,000 meters. This was the environment Robin stepped into the week he summited, but he didn't ignore the risk. He called it out, and that takes us to what he wrote before his final climb. Days before leaving high camp, Robin wrote the post that everyone would quote later. With only one narrow route to the top, he said straight out that crowding near the summit could turn deadly. He adjusted his plan, wait a few days, then aim for May 25th to dodge the worst of the line. He wasn't guessing. He had already rotated high, tagged Camp 3, then dropped when the jet stream kicked back in. In that same window, he laid out a clean schedule: leave base camp on the 21st, push for the top on the 25th, and confirmed he'd climb with his Sherpa, Jang Bu. It read like a checklist: watch the forecast, avoid the jam, move fast. The logic was sound. Fewer people around you means fewer stops on fixed lines, less time bleeding oxygen, and more strength for the descent, the part that kills. But smart minds think alike. Other teams picked the same plan, stacking more climbers into the same day Robin chose. His warning matters because it named the exact risk that would take his life. Long waits at extreme height feed altitude illness and exhaustion on the way down. He would reach the summit on May 25th, then collapse during the descent just below the top, proof that even a careful strategy can't erase what time in the death zone does to the body. Robin moved out with a small team and his Sherpa, Jang Bu, aiming for a quick, clean climb through the upper ridge. Reports from his operator say the group reached the summit at around 8:30 a.m., local time, on May 25th, 2019. It was a big moment in a crowded week, but the real test was still the way down. The ridge was busy that window. Traffic near the top forced stop-and-go movement on the fixed lines, which drains energy and burns through oxygen faster than planned. That matters because the descent is where most climbers get into trouble, especially after a long push above 8,000 meters. The math is simple. More minutes in the death zone mean higher risk of altitude illness and exhaustion, the exact pattern that would define Robin's final hour. As the team turned back from the summit, both Robin and Jang Bu reported illness during the descent. Guides tried to manage the situation quickly, but every delay at that height narrows options. The next stretch would decide everything. The turn came fast. About 150 meters below the summit, Around 8,700 meters, Robin went down. Guides tried the basics that sometimes buy time up high. Swap the oxygen bottle, give water, keep him moving. But his condition slid the wrong way. There was no fall, no rope failure. It was the classic Everest emergency. Altitude illness and exhaustion in the death zone after a summit. At that height, options are limited. There's no real medical care, no quick evac, and almost no margin for a slow carry. Every extra minute drains a climber further. The team focused on stabilizing him on the line, but he couldn't be revived. The descent that saves most climbers, get lower, get oxygen flowing, get warmer, didn't come together in time. Complicating things, his Sherpa, Zhang Bu, also fell ill and had to be moved down. That split attention is common on crowded summit days. Multiple people need help at once, and the fixed rope is a single lane. Passing is hard. Turning around a group takes time. Time is the one thing the body can't spare at nearly 9,000 meters. Robin had reached the top that morning. The cause of death remained clear and direct. Altitude illness and exhaustion on the descent, following a summit during one of the season's busiest windows. No scandal, no mystery, just the unforgiving math of thin air and delayed movement near the top. What followed wasn't just grief. It sparked a loud argument across the climbing world about why 2019 turned so deadly and whether congestion and policy played a role. After the season ended, the argument began. Many climbers and commentators pointed at the obvious. Long queues near the ridge hold people in the death zone too long. That means more oxygen burned, more cold exposure, and less energy left for the descent. Others pushed a different angle. Everest is always dangerous, they said. And 2019 mixed several factors at once. A short weather window, too many permits, uneven client experience, and operators with different standards for staffing and oxygen planning. In that view, congestion wasn't the single cause so much as one piece of a system under pressure. The mountain didn't change. The margins did. There was also debate over responsibility. Should the government limit permits? Should operators screen clients more strictly or carry more spare oxygen at the front of the line? Should teams stagger summit times to avoid the choke points? None of those fixes are simple when one rope and one route funnel everyone to the same place at nearly 9,000 meters. What's not in dispute is Robin's death. He summited on May 25, 2019, then collapsed on the descent near 8,700 meters in a week defined by delays. The policy debate matters for the future, but his outcome was decided by what happened to his body at extreme height that day. After 2019, officials promised changes. The first concrete step landed in 2024. Climbers and guides on Everest had to wear tracking devices so rescues could find people faster. It wasn't a cure-all, but it cut search time and gave teams another safety layer. In 2025, Nepal moved on costs and standards. Permit fees jumped from $11,000 to $15,000 for the main spring season. And the government floated a tighter rulebook around guides, health checks, and waste. Several operators describe a push for medical fitness certificates issued in Nepal and stricter guide requirements. The most argued change is experience. A draft law would limit Everest permits to climbers who've already summited at least one 7,000-meter peak in Nepal. Supporters say it filters out underprepared clients and reduces jams near the top. Critics want high-altitude experience to count, no matter where it's earned, and warn about bottlenecks on Nepal's few popular 7,000ers. As of mid-2025, the rule was proposed advancing, with operators prepping accordingly. None of this rewrites the physics up high. Long waits still drain oxygen and strength, and the descent is where bodies fail. That's what happened to Haynes Fisher. He summited on May 25, 2019, then collapsed near 8,700 meters on the way down during a crowded window. The new policies aim to reduce exactly those risks, but they can't erase them. Rules aside, his final climb shows what these changes are trying to prevent. His final posts were measured, not dramatic. He flagged the risk plainly. Crowding near the top could turn deadly, and adjusted his plan to move when he thought the line would thin. People remember that warning because it's exactly what unfolded around him. His story is often packaged with the viral rich photo and the season's loud arguments. Strip that noise away, and the bottom line stays the same. He made the top of Mount Everest. On the way down, near 8,700 meters, he collapsed. Guides swapped his oxygen and tried to help. He couldn't be revived. He died on the descent during a congested window. No hidden scandal, no secret twist. Just the limits of the human body at extreme height when time runs long. What should change because of that? Some point to stricter experience requirements. Others want tighter control of permits, start times, or oxygen plans. Operators talk about spacing teams and carrying more reserves. Officials focus on rules and rescue tools. None of that brings him back, but each idea targets the same weak point he warned about: delays where the margin is already close to zero. If his legacy is one line, it's this: a climber who called out the risk and still got caught in it. That truth isn't a headline, it's a test. Who takes responsibility the next time the window shrinks and the line grows on the ridge? Because the physics won't change, and the descent is still where lives are decided.